Searching for music for your next video? Then you need to check out Artlist. With amazing new music added daily and one simple license that covers everything. Artlist is the music licensing platform for all creators. Start now and find the perfect song. Artlist, made for creators.
Welcome to the White Lotus in Sicily.
La Dolce Vita.
Family vacation right now, and it's just the three of us, because all the women in our family hate you.
A man does what he has to do. If you're sloppy, it's like you're rubbing her face.
What happened last night?
Just been a series of very bad decisions.
Italy's just so romantic. You're gonna die. We're gonna have to drag you out of here.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Inside View live podcast. I am your host, Teddy Panos, coming to you live this Wednesday morning, I have to check my calendar here, December 14th, 2022. We appreciate all of you joining us for the live podcast and those of you who will be watching this in the coming days and weeks on our InsideLowell website and our YouTube channel, watching it at your own convenience. As we like to say here at InsideLowell, we provide news, information, and entertainment on your schedule, not ours. But I'm very excited this morning. We got a great show planned for you, a very topical and very relevant show on this really cold December morning here. Got a special guest in studio with me. I'm going to introduce him to you as well. And he is far more of an expert in his field than I am in mine. So it's good to have him here, and a gentleman that I've known for a long time. Want to first of all thank our sponsors and remind you that they are the ones who make the Inside View with Teddy Panos possible. Our friends at Washington Savings Bank, an institution here in the Mill City for over 130 years, great banking products, great banking services, which I will be taking advantage of later on this week myself. Also want to say thank you to our friends at Hafner's Fuels. They're running a special that they've been promoting out there on their social media pages. Their Hafner's Car Wash is yet another service that they provide, but you can become a member of their club and save a ton of money this winter as you try to get that salt and dirt that does so much damage to your vehicles. You can take it, get it off your vehicle. Hafner's Car Washes. Thank you to our friends at Hafner's for being supporters. And of course, our friends at Reverie 73, a cannabis dispensary located right here in Lowell, Massachusetts, 1148 Bridge Street to be exact. They've got two new locations opening, one in Gloucester, one in Beverly in 2023. Reverie 73, to listen, explain, inspire, and delight, which is kind of what we like to do here on the Inside View as well. To explain, inspire, and hopefully delight, entertain. And for that part of it this morning, I'm very pleased to welcome a good friend of mine, a gentleman I've known for many years now. And I didn't know how much of an expert in his field he was until just a couple of years ago. But Angelos Kokkinos is here in studios with us this morning. Good morning, Angelos. How are you, sir?
Teddy, it's great to be here. I'm doing great. And I want to congratulate you on your new gig, as we say.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I listen to you and your favorite listener, Lillian of North Billerica.
I am hoping that my biggest fan, Lillian of North Billerica, is actually watching us live today, or at least on tape.
I hope she is too. Although her son-in-law is on, so I don't know if she's gonna.
She's sick of you. I'm the special guest in Lillian's home. You're the special guest to our audience that's sick of me, but I'm the special guest for Lillian.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
Hello, how are you, Lillian? Great to have you watching us here in our new format. Before we get going and talk about what I'm going to label a controversial article that you submitted for us as a special guest contributor to Inside Lowell, and we posted it last night. The title of it may catch a few people off guard because it's certainly not the politically correct article that people might expect in 2022. It's titled "Why Lowell and New England Need Fossil Fuels," and it is posted on InsideLowell.com. We're going to talk a lot about that as well as other things today, but I encourage people to head over InsideLowell.com and check it out. Why Lowell and why New England need the emphasis fossil fuels. Before we start talking about why you believe that's the case, let people know a little bit about yourself and that you're not just some loudmouth radio host like me who happens to say the same thing over and over again.
Yeah. Let me tell you something. I came into Lowell in 1970, over half a century ago from the old country, and I went and studied chemical engineering at UMass Lowell. At that time, we used to call it Lowell Tech. And then after that, I went to Penn State, where I got a master's degree in fuel science. And I've worked for 44 years in the energy industry. Private industry for the first 38 years, and then the last 6 years I worked for the Department of Energy in the Office of Fossil Energy and Carbon Management, which is another fancy title for greenhouse gas emissions controls. And at that time, in the government, I was Associate Deputy Assistant Secretary for fossil energy and clean coal, or clean coal carbon management systems. So I have over many years experience in the area of power generation and how to control and minimize emissions from the generation of power, both for electricity and also for industrial purposes. So I have 6 U.S. patents in my name, and my greatest achievement is when my alma mater, Penn State, named me the 2019 Distinguished Award in Fuel Science and Energy Engineering. So that was a big honor for me to be recognized.
Yeah, and that certainly is. And for anyone who questions Angelos' knowledge about what he's talking about, now they may question your conclusions, but we'll try to convince people that. But I'm going to play devil's advocate for a lot of this morning's interview, because I happen to agree with you.
Let me just start one more thing. People, as they would see from the article, would think that I'm all fossil fuels. In my career, I was the chief engineer. I was vice president of engineering for the design of the largest concentrated solar power plant in the world, which is located in Ivanpah, California. And I was also chief technology officer for the second largest concentrated power plant in the world from solar power, which is located in Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates. So this was from my so I know energy from both sides. So
that's where I was going to go, because you kind of, it seems that your career, at least with the Department of Energy, was based on the fossil fuel sector of it, albeit carbon capture, carbon emissions, etc. But to be clear, have you in any way been employed by fossil fuel companies, big oils? Have you done any work on their behalf, research, etc.?
I have not done any work on their behalf. I have worked for companies that supplied equipment to big oil and supply equipment mostly to electric power generating companies all over the world. And I have traveled all over the world for that matter.
Okay, but you are somebody who is somewhat knowledgeable in all different components. And as you said, you've worked on solar projects as well. So why such a sensational headline? You had to know, and for the record, people who used to listen to my radio show know that you have been on it on a couple of occasions. At one point, while you were still employed, we've unmasked you as my source deep drill in the United States energy sector.
Old fossil.
Old fossil, yeah. I think that's what your wife Susan calls you. But you even after you retired, I believe you did at least one appearance with me on the radio, and you were still somewhat measured in your discussions. You took a little bit of a political tone in this article here, and you almost sounded, I don't want to say angry, but frustrated that policy decisions were made to get us to a point where you believe there is the potential this winter for Lowellians, Greater Lowellians, and New Englanders to suffer some kind of energy crisis blackout situation.
Exactly.
Here's
so
the
reason
right
why. Well, here is the reason why. And it's not political. It's more of that I am a resident of this area, and it's more out of concern that we are leaving ourselves vulnerable to situations just like of what happened in February of 2021, last year in Texas, and what is happening now in Europe, in the European Union, as a result of the war with the Ukraine. And the major portion why I'm concerned about having electricity, because I believe electricity is as important as food, water, and shelter in our daily lives.
You actually provided a statistic to me a few months back about what the average life expectancy was prior to the invention of electricity and the Industrial Revolution, which were fueled in many ways by fossil fuels.
Exactly. In 1900, in the United States, the average life expectancy was 48 years old. Today, it's 78. Okay. So it has almost doubled in 120 years. And it's all because of the advancements that we have made in our lifestyles, in our welfare systems, etc., since that time. And fossil energy, which provides at this time about 80% of our energy sources on everything we touch, from drugs. 99.9% of the drugs are produced using petroleum as the feedstock.
So I was going to play devil's advocate again and mention, that life expectancy, we can credit science and medicine as well for bringing that from 48 to 78.
Right.
But science and medicine in some ways is tied to fossil fuels.
Fertilizers are tied to it as the issue is that the population has expanded, and what have we done is to keep up with it. We develop fertilizers which come from fossil fuels, which are twice as effective as organic fertilizers that we were using back then, dung, other things to, compost to get our food. So that was another reason why it has expanded. The other reason is think about all the energy that we use in the medical field. MRIs use electricity, magnetism. They work with magnets and all that other stuff.
So I'm not going to ask the question, should we be concerned about the potential of an energy shortage or some type of rolling blackouts this winter in New England? You say we should be concerned about it. Why?
Well,
what's causing that concern on your part?
Here's what causing my concern is that we have, as we have seen, our legislature is passing laws and regulations that favor one method of energy production versus another. And in our particular case, is renewable energy, either wind or solar. Those types of energy sources are good, and we should be using them. The issue that you have with those sources is that they are intermittent. First, because you don't know when the wind is blowing or when the wind is going to die down. And second is the sun only gets up in the morning and comes down at night. So at night, you cannot generate any solar power. So as a result of that, you have to have what is called backup or firm power generation. In our case, everywhere actually in the world, the firm or backup power is fossil energy, fossil sources, nuclear forces, nuclear power, or hydroelectric power.
Why can't we take all the excess energy when the sun and the wind are at their peak, use that as backup, i.e. storage and battery? Why isn't that a viable option today as we sit here?
Well, it is a viable option. However, the batteries have a finite life to them. In other words, you have to have at a minimum of 8 hours. And then what happens if the power is lost for more than 8 hours? You need to recharge those batteries, number one. Number two, the number and the magnitude of that battery storage is enormous. And the resources that are needed to make a battery are huge. To give you an example, a Tesla electric vehicle has about 1,000 pounds of battery, which is only like 100 kilowatts. It's very, very minor. Just to give you an idea, we use 24,000 megawatts, which is kilowatt times 1,000. It's 1,000 pounds of battery in a Tesla or a Chevy Volt or whatever they're called. To make those 1,000 pounds of battery, you need to dig the ground and process 500,000 pounds of dirt.
Digging, another word for that would be mining.
Mining, exactly.
Just to be clear for people who, they don't like mining for coal, you're mining for battery materials.
Exactly.
Are they cleaner? Is mining for lithium or cobalt or whatever you need, is that cleaner than mining for coal?
Well, you have to, actually, it's the reason why you have to dig 500,000 pounds for 1,000 pounds is because the concentrations of some of those ingredients are very low, so you have to process a lot of dirt. Some of that material, some of that critical material, for example, cobalt, it's only 30 pounds of cobalt in this 1,000 pounds of dirt, okay? By the way, this thing has cobalt in it and lithium and graphite and things like that. Our 2/3 of the world deposits are in a place called the Democratic Republic of Congo. Mm-hmm. And you know what they use for mining there?
Good slave labor, right?
7 to 10-year-old boys and girls. So I get And yet, we have cobalt assets here in the United States. It's all the waste from the old coal mines in Pennsylvania and West Virginia that they separated the coal and they kept the waste and put it away, and you can get it. But it takes 10 to 12 years to get a mining permit in the United States.
Isn't there also a process, I believe it's for lithium, whereby water is used, like up in the Salt Lakes
Absolutely.
in Utah?
Yes, yeah.
But again, we're talking about water, another valuable resource. So this
Absolutely.
quote unquote green / clean energy isn't exactly friendly to our natural resources
Yes.
here in the environment, much to people's surprise, if they really
Exactly.
stop and think about it, right?
Exactly. And they also talk about hydrogen. Oh, we got plenty of water. Hydrogen you make out of hydrogen doesn't make carbon dioxide, doesn't make other pollutants. It's basically when you burn it, it's water. That's all it makes. So they say, oh, we're gonna take water and break it down and make hydrogen out of it. And we're going to use a process called electrolysis, which is basically electricity, to break it down. And the electricity is going to come from renewable sources. Well, to make hydrogen, you don't just take tap water. You take what I call holy water. That is absolutely, positively, totally demineralized water, and that takes energy to get it to that place.
Don't let's not complicate things too much. Let's take a devil's advocate break here for a minute. These arguments have been heard before, and many of them have been kind of pushed away. And even the fact of a potential energy crisis, they've been explained away as big oil scare tactics. The fossil fuel industries, they want to keep their money-making machine, so they're just scaring you that we have enough energy. They're not as mining these minerals, etc., isn't as bad to the environment, and it's all just an effort by big oil to scare people into continuing to pour profits, record profits. I have to throw the word record in there, into their coffers. How do you respond?
Well, they are private companies. They have a fiduciary duty to their shareholders to provide them with a return on their investment. Just like I have a 401k, you probably do too, and your mutual funds, I'm sure they have stock in ExxonMobil, Chevron, etc., and you would like to see those mutual funds give you some return on your investment, so you can have but
not at the expense of the planet. If we're killing Mother Earth, we don't want to. We don't want to enrich people.
But the issue is that in 2020, ExxonMobil, for example, announced that they had a 20 billion with a B loss due to the pandemic, and it was the first loss that they had as a traded company. And at that time, if you look at the CO2 emission statistics, because everybody went and wasn't driving, everybody stayed home, right, during the pandemic, actually CO2 emissions went up.
Because we were using more energy in our homes instead of in office buildings and on the roads.
Exactly. So it's a fact of life, and what we need to be doing is we need to be thinking about how do we go about having our cake and eating it too. And that's, I kind of hinted my article that's my next article, because there are technologies that we, the United States, have developed that they are commercially available and have been used over the last 70 years, more than 70 years, that capture some of these pollutants and our
All right, that's going to be our cliffhanger, a future article on InsideLowell.com by Angelos Kokkinos, part 2. He'll explain to you why the technology exists to be able to burn fossil fuels, use them in a clean way. But right now, he kind of wrote the article about the need for fossil fuels in Lowell and in New England. It's on our website, InsideLowell.com. We encourage everybody to head over and read it and watch along with this podcast. I want to thank our sponsors for helping to make this podcast possible. Our friends at Washington Savings Bank, 130 years here in the Mill City and outside the Mill City as well now, but a great institution, great organization, tremendous banking products, banking services. Check them out, WashingtonSavingsBank.com. Thank you as well to our friends at Hafner's. They certainly kick. It kicks any number of services, gas stations, heating oil. There you go, fossil fuels for your home. I bet they're liking this podcast topic, but also their Hafner's Car Wash is great holiday gift. Become a member of their car wash club and keep your car clean this winter. And of course, Reverie 73, a cannabis dispensary right here on Bridge Street in Lowell. They've got a couple of new locations opening up in the spring and summer of 2023, one in Gloucester, one in Beverly, but do check them out, 1148 Bridge Street in Lowell, Reverie 73, to listen, explain, inspire, and delight. Thank you to them for making the Inside View live broadcast possible. And thank you to all of our sponsors here at Inside Lowell. Meanwhile, we return to our special guest, Angelos Kokkinos, retired from the United States Department of Treasury. How many years? Department of Energy.
I wish I was in Treasury.
You wish you were in Treasury. How many years again did you work for them?
6
years you
and
worked for them.
By the way, I want to make sure that everybody understands. I was a civil employee. I was a federal employee. I was not a political appointee. I was hired by the Obama administration. So I worked for the Obama administration, the Trump administration, and the Biden administration.
There was a comment of a buddy of mine who, saw that I posted the article and knew that you were coming on this morning and said, he's been around the government as long as Fauci. No, you only worked for them for 6 years.
Right.
You've worked in the energy fields
for 38 years.
For almost as long as Fauci.
Yeah.
You're far more accomplished than Fauci. All right. Why are there real world examples? You mentioned Europe. Of what could happen here in New England this winter. And what's the scenario whereby it could happen and folks in Lowell may have to go without electricity for an hour or two at a time?
And I want to go back. Thank you for the question, because this is a key question, okay? New England experienced this type of event but we were lucky. We didn't lose electricity. In the Christmas time, the week between Christmas and New Year's of 2017.
The bomb cyclone.
It was called the bomb cyclone.
With the weather reporters.
It was the bomb cyclone where we had temperatures in the low teens to single digits for a week, for 7 days or so. What happens at that point is that obviously people use a lot of gas to heat their home or oil.
You turn your heat up higher than you normally do.
You turn your heat up, or you use more heat because of the temperature outside.
You plug in space heaters. You do all sorts of things.
And the electricity also goes up. The electricity goes up because the fans or pumps that you have for heating or in this commercial buildings go up. So the electricity demand was fairly high. Okay. At the same time, the people were asking for gas to heat their homes, and there's only so much capacity in the gas pipelines that are coming in from outside of the state, mainly from Pennsylvania and West Virginia, into the state, that you could only get so much gas through the pipe. The state and the federal government have rules that say, hey, if you have fuel needs, the number one priority is protect the people, as it should be. So what they did was they curtail the supply of natural gas to industry, including power plants. Okay.
That seems counterproductive. You want to make sure that the people are allowed to get the electricity they need, so you're going to curb industrial energy usage. But why would power plants be included in that curve?
They are.
Don't the power plants produce the energy that the elderly need, the young kids need?
They are. But if you the pressure, the supply line pressures go down, and the equipment that the power plants have also cannot accept below a certain level of power pressure for the gas. So they have, out of technical reasons, also they have to lower down. But the number one priority is keep the people warm. You don't want to have people freeze to death.
Okay.
So what happened was the New England Independent System Operator, which is a nonprofit organization that controls
New England ISO,
as they called the New England ISO, ahead of time told the utilities, this was back in late summer of 17, told the utilities, hey, in case we have a severe winter like we did have in 2005, I want you guys to store 4 million barrels of oil, diesel, in your storage tanks. And I will pay you, the New England ISO, I will pay you $40 million to store those diesel so you can use it as a backup, because the gas power plants can also operate with diesel. So when this thing happened around Christmas time of 2017, what happened was the power that was needed was generated, mainly over 30% of that power was generated by diesel. And because I was head of the committee that was advising Secretary Perry at the time, because it was of extreme concern to the federal government about New England and what was going to happen, I know that after 6 days of that weather, we went down from 4 million barrels down to about 1.9 million barrels.
So we used about half of our reserve.
Half of that reserve.
And for folks who are kind of like wondering about these numbers, they are in Angelo's article on InsideLowell.com, why Lowell and New England need energy. So we had 4 million in backup diesel fuel to help in case of this weather scenario, which came true in 2017. Correct. We used about half of that to get down to about 1.9 that we still had left.
Right.
How much do we have today on December 14th, 2022?
We have about 2 million barrels.
So we used 2.1 in 2017. We only have 2 today.
We only have 2 today.
Reserve.
Yeah.
We must, in order to have that situation exist, please tell me that we must have enough other forms of energy to be able to meet said demand.
We don't.
Do we have more or less, same amount as we did in 2017?
In terms of other energy?
In terms of other energy supplies.
Yes,
we have more?
No.
No, we don't. We don't have more stored.
We haven't built new gas lines. We haven't built a new natural gas pipeline in 100 years. I don't know how many years ago. The last one, we have some renewable that I'm sure has been built, but that's not nearly enough to cover, because that what happened in 2017, 2018, when this thing finished up at about January 3rd. Mm-hmm. On January 3rd, when we had 1.9 million barrels, we were estimating that that was good for 3 additional days of if this wave had extended for 3 more days, then they would have to go into rotating blackout.
How probable is this wave extending? I mean, a week-long severe cold front, those don't happen very often, though, right? What's the probability of it happening again another
Well,
winter
it
this
happened
winter?
in 2005. And actually, in 2005, it was worse. That was the polar vortex, if you recall.
I love the names, by the way.
Yes.
Polar vortex, bomb, cyclone.
And so it's not like a 100-year event. In 2005, it was worse than 2017, but in 2005, we had an extra 1,700 megawatts of coal-fired power generation in New England, which was at the Brayton Point Station in New Bedford, that had over $2 billion worth of environmental control equipment installed to it. And of course, that 1,700 megawatts was never replaced after actually was taken off in 2017.
So when you were in D.C. in 2017, people were sounding the alarm. New England ISO, the United States officials, they were worried about New England.
Very concerned.
Do you have any indication, now you're not in D.C. anymore, but do you have any indication that similar concern exists today for New England?
Well, I do have similar concern when I see that, for example, the legislature passed a law and the governor signed it that talks about two things. One was 5.7 gigawatts of wind power to be developed offshore. And people don't appreciate, first of all, this 5.7 gigawatts, it's going to need about a third in backup power. In other words, in firm power that doesn't exist anymore. Okay. So where are we going to get that backup power when the wind doesn't blow offshore, or if it's too cold because those wind turbines don't work very well in below 0 degrees Fahrenheit, or if it's icing, or if it's too windy. They don't work if it's too windy.
Wind turbines don't work if it's too windy?
Yeah, if it's over 60 miles per hour or 70 miles per hour, they don't.
I don't mean to laugh, but this is borderline comical that people actually think that this is rational energy policy. Let's talk about Germany. You mentioned Germany earlier. They are the shining example of what wind energy is supposed to be. They did what people, environmentalists here in America, want us to do, and that's go all in on wind. What's happening in Germany today?
What's happening in Germany today is, as you know, there's a war in the Ukraine, and Germany lost its gas supplies, most of its gas supplies, from Russia because of the war. The sanctions, and on top of that, if you heard that the gas pipeline, one of the major gas pipeline got blown up under mysterious circumstances on the Baltic Sea. So they lost their natural gas, or most of their natural gas, and they also lost most of their oil supply because they kind of like, again, because of sanctions, they buy 50% of their oil from Russia.
All right, so it's easy to blame Putin and the war and whatever, but my question is, aren't they the shining example of how wind power can replace all this?
Exactly.
What does it matter what is happening in the Ukraine and to their gas supply?
Exactly.
They've got enough wind turbines out there to... And by the way, Germany's a small country. What is it, about the size of New England when you get down to it?
Well, it's size of Texas.
Okay, size of one American state. But they've got so much wind energy out there. What does it matter what's happening with their gas and oil supply?
Theoretically, they have 120 gigawatts of wind and solar energy generation in the country. At a certain day, their peak demand of electricity per day is 80 gigawatts. So they have over 50%, 150% of what they need to generate. But because of the intermittency, and this is what people do not appreciate is the intermittency of that power. They now are, and they have said they were going to retire all their coal-fired power plants by 2035. They not only are not retiring them, but they are taking a few out of mothball and starting them again.
So they're burning the dirtiest of all
Exactly.
fuels, coal,
Exactly.
to save their ass from their politics.
Exactly.
And it's not
Exactly.
just Germany, though. I mean, I read a story.
Netherlands.
Ago,
Netherlands.
Switzerland is now going to limit the times. They're discussing limiting the times you can charge your electric vehicle because
Exactly.
of these
Well,
exact situations, right?
You don't have to go to Switzerland. Oh, you got to go to California. When was it, September or August of this year, they had some heat waves. And the day before, one day they said, we're going to be all electric cars by 2030 or something like that. They're going to forbid the sale of gas cars. And the next day, the next day, the California Utility Commission came out and said, please don't charge your cars between this hour and this hour. I mean, it's like,
Force people to buy electric cars, then you can't charge them. There's also an example this summer in Colorado of what happens when you leave yourself so vulnerable, and that was in extreme heat. Folks with these, those who know me, the throat clear means, I'm about to say bullshit. These smart thermostats are so smart that when they went to turn them down, to turn the temperature down to fire up the air conditioning to a higher degree.
Correct.
They couldn't go below 78 degrees because somebody was controlling their smart thermostat from a central location. True story?
Yes, indeed.
Which can happen here as well.
Exactly.
Which means if they can control how much you turn on your AC, they can control how much you turn on your heat. Here in Lowell and New England, if you have a smart thermostat. Correct.
And the other thing but the other thing that our expert legislators did was also is that they follow the advice of this guy. I think he got fired or he was asked to retire politely. That said that we need to switch over the biggest greenhouse gas producers in Massachusetts are the people that are the home heating. It's the home heating system. 60% of our carbon emissions or CO2 emissions are when we heat our home. So this guy says, well, we gotta make them hurt so they can reduce their emissions. So what happened? So what happened is that they passed this law that said, oh, we're gonna request that 500,000 homes by 2027, they're gonna have to have heat pumps. Now, it's a noble cause to do that because heat pump is the most efficient energy heating and air conditioning system that one could have from electricity point of view or even from a furnace, not normal furnace, typical furnace operation. The issue that I have with that is that it's electricity. So where is all this electricity gonna come from? There's three sources that we could get that electricity from. Build more electric power generating stations, like the 5.7 gigawatts offshore. Two is build electric transmission lines to bring more electricity from outside of New England. Or three is build more to build more natural gas pipelines to bring more gas into New England and build more gas power stations. So these are the three options. Well, I'm sure you heard, trying to build high voltage transmission lines, Maine rejected it to bring it from Canada. New Hampshire rejected it. New York doesn't want it. So that's out. The second one is we're going to put in bigger, building natural gas pipelines. Well, New York State has a law that says no gas pipelines are going to come through our state. We're isolated. So what are we going to do? Bring in Russian gas from liquefied natural gas, because we can't use our own liquefied natural gas because we don't have any ships that carry the U.S. flag to bring it in.
So all these, and we got to wrap it up in a couple of minutes here, and I do want to talk about something Congress hands off, Harold did just last week. But let's say my belief, and it sounds like your belief, is that common sense needs to prevail here in our energy policy. How long would it take to reverse what has been done the last few years as we tried to force feed these clean is that incredulous topic, energy sources? How long will it take to reverse this and make sure that we're energy independent again as a region here in New England and across the country?
We need to, in my opinion, it can be done fairly quickly if we do not pick winners and losers in our energy policy. And here's what I'm talking about. Is winners is we're incentivizing certain form of energy at the expense of another form of energy, that if we don't make it the playing field even, that other source of energy, because of our system, will go away. And then we're going to be in a situation like Texas is back in February of 21.
The cleanest form of energy, I think everybody agrees, nuclear
Correct.
power. But
Correct.
there was a political movement against that in the 70s and 80s. And we've seen through Chernobyl and was it Fukushima out in Japan,
Fukushima.
What can happen when it goes bad. Last week, Congresswoman Trahan's office sent out a press release hailing the historic fusion energy progress. What's fusion energy? Is that not kind of nuclear?
It's nuclear energy that is basically the energy that is the sun has, so it can continuously provide energy. It is not nuclear. It doesn't have the waste, the issues of radiation issues that you have. Okay. Now, your brother-in-law, St. Paris
of Andover, yes.
Of Andover is a nuclear engineer, so he knows. I'm a chemical engineer, so he knows a lot more about that than I do. But to me, it's a very good development that Lawrence Livermore and Berkeley National Labs, my friends over there, have come up with, because it produces more energy than what it uses.
Fusion energy.
Okay. And also it doesn't have the bad rap of nuclear waste,
which is an issue. I mean,
which is an issue.
It's,
yes,
it's definitely something to be concerned about.
Which is an issue. However, let's not get overly excited. People need to look at it, because about 20, 30 years ago, people also said that they have discovered it out of the University of Michigan, by the way. We need to find out if it's indeed, it's peer reviewed. And secondly, is if it's found to be correct, we are decades, not 10 years, decades. We are 40 to 50 years away from putting that into a reality.
So half a lifetime for most humans.
Actually, at least 1 or 2 generations away.
Why is it that far away? So, and this is one of the things that's vexed me, because to drill for oil and natural gas and mine for coal, whether you do it under the earth or in the ocean or whatever. I mean, that's a long process. You have to discover it. We didn't really discover it till the 1800s or so, right? Then you have to drill it, mine it, refine it, etc. The sun has been around since the very first human walked around, whether you want to believe that's the caveman or Adam and Eve or whoever. The sun has been there. You would think something that was so readily apparent would be discoverable and, usable as a source of energy to sustain us. That's why I'm kind of pessimistic about us ever being able to harness it, because a lot of brilliant minds have not figured out how to harness something that's there. It's up in the sky. Just look up. There it is. It's there this morning.
I as much as I like you, Ted, I disagree with you.
Okay.
We discovered, up to 1850, whenever fossil fuels were discovered, we were at 100% renewable energy society, humanity. We use the sun to, for example, vaporize salt water to make salt, because salt was very critical. We use hydro energy. You see this town of Lowell, all these canals, hydrogen, the water movement was providing power. We use wind. The windmills.
Yep, the Dutch were great with them. Yeah,
and even here we will use them. But what
and
happened?
People died very young, elderly, froze in the winter, died of heat exposure in the summer.
We cut trees. We cut trees to heat our homes and cook.
Oh yeah, we deforested. The rain Avatar's coming out in just a couple of days.
We kill the whales. For what?
Whale oil.
Well, thank you. So we use that, and then what we found is that all that energy, the sun energy and the wind energy, is low density energy. You need a lot to get very little. You need to move a lot. Just to give you an idea, okay? The wind, the 5.7 gigawatts of wind power that they're going to put offshore. They're talking about putting offshore, right? For 1 megawatt of electricity, a wind turbine requires 60 acres of land. Okay. So if I take 5.7 gigawatts, which is 5,700 megawatts, and multiply it by 60, I end up with 342,000 acres of sea that they have to utilize to put all these wind turbines in. You know what the acreage is of the state of Rhode Island is? 776,000 acres. So half the state of Rhode Island is going to be the equivalent. It's going to be out there. You can't put them on the Massachusetts Bay.
Where would John Kerry sail his yacht? Sorry, I couldn't help myself.
No comment.
Let's end it there. Angelos Kokkinos, I want to thank you for joining me this morning and giving a little further explanation into the article you submitted. It is live on InsideLowell.com as we speak. Why Lowell and New England need fossil fuels. It's controversial. I like it. I happen to agree with it. You're much better at stating the position why, and you have the background that you know what you speak of. I'm looking forward to the follow-up article. You're saying in January?
Yes.
All right. Hopefully, when you write it, we haven't experienced the replay of the bomb cyclone.
I hope
because I don't like that number there. Because at 1.9, we had to use 2 million, backup barrels of diesel, and there's a diesel shortage, by the way.
That's correct.
And this is something that the national media and the White House is acknowledging. So we're not just making that up.
There were only 25 days left of national consumption of diesel.
And now you know why they're so concerned. It's not just the ability for trucks to get back and forth with the food supply that people need. It's also to heat their homes.
Exactly.
In the winter.
Exactly.
All right.
Exactly.
Angelo Kokkinos, thank you so much for joining us.
Teddy's got a pleasure being with you. And I'm gonna have lunch with St. Paris on Thursday. In a Greek restaurant.
You never invited me.
No. You can come. I'll pick you up.
all right.
We're gonna be not at the Athenian Corner, by the way. Not
that's
at
all
the
right.
Cafe Neo, as I call it.
I'll forgive you. Thank you. I look forward to reading your follow-up
Take care.
article. I want to thank all of you who watched us live this morning on Wednesday morning, December 14th. And again, of course, those of you who are watching this on tape at your own convenience, head on over to InsideLowell.com, read Angelos's article, read all of our material. We've got a bunch of it that's coming online, a bunch of new podcasts we've uploaded in the last couple of days, a great wine podcast by Jim Campanini, and a Lowell wine kind of pioneer as well, Craig Gandalf, Wine in a Can. Sounds silly, right? Especially for the snobby wine drinkers. It's not. Watch the podcast and figure out why. And I'll tell you, having sampled the products, grade A. But make sure you check out everything InsideLowell.com. I want to thank you for joining us this morning. Till next time, everybody stay safe. And yeah, please stay warm. Fire up those fossil fuels, baby.